Okay, so I'm here today with Nick Pearson, who I found through YouTube, who fascinated me with his work that he does. And I want to introduce Nick Pearson here.
Hi.
Hi. And I was fascinated by the witness bears image. The image bears witness to the state. And I've myself got into hypnosis a few years ago. I studied, but I found that your technique took my understanding to a new level. And also, I've been very interested in Carl Jung's work over the years. So, when I found you, I did contact you, and then I had a meeting with you. And we're moving on to now this moment where we're meeting in a studio to discuss your work.
Yep.
Okay, so I'd like to know a bit about your journey, and I do know that from the reading that I've done that your work and life in India and career and army politics and how that shaped your later path.
Yes, I mean, I was born in India, and it's difficult to know how it shaped me, but because I left when I was very young, I left when I was 4. But all I know is that when I go back to India, I only have to hear the crows and feel the heat and hear the noises and the smells, and I sort of feel I'm home. So it obviously made an impression on me.
Absolutely. So this is wonderful. I've never been to India, but I hope one day that I get to experience something like that. Later on, you mentioned that you had an event that changed everything and led you into the psychotherapy world of the imagination. So, could you tell me a
Yes,
bit about
I
that?
mean, you look. I had a tremendously conventional upbringing. I was brought up on a farm. I joined the army at 18, really because I couldn't think of anything else to do, and it seemed sort of adventurous and nice. And then I spent 10 years in the army. I had a wonderful time. Went all over the world, all at the taxpayer's expense, which was quite nice. Didn't work too hard. The little wars we fought weren't too hard. We sort of used to win them in those days,
Yeah, yeah.
whereas it's a bit different
Is that the
now.
Second World War?
No, 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 not
Not
after
one.
the Second World War. I was born in the middle of the
Oh,
Second World
sorry.
War, so
Okay,
I was born in
okay.
'43. So no, but the sort of what were called sort of counter-terrorism operations in Borneo and Central Africa and so on, which
Wow.
were yeah, interesting, very interesting. And then when I came out of the army in the early 70s, I felt I was probably completely unemployable. I had no qualifications to do anything. So 3 of us started an air chartering business in Africa, an air freight chartering business in Africa. So again, that took me just huge adventures all over the place. And after that, my father had been in politics. I thought maybe I would try politics. And the whole experience completely cured me of ever wanting to be in politics. But what happened was I then had a shocking road accident and killed a man. And I just knew following that I was going to stop pretending because I hadn't really been deeply involved in what I was doing. I was getting by okay, but I wasn't fully engaged. And I just simply, that whole crisis, which was a really terrible time, I just thought I'm not going to pretend anymore. I'm just not going to pretend. I'm going to find a way for myself that is, I mean, I hate to use it because it's a sort of overused word, but authentic, that
Yeah,
is no longer fraudulent, that is, yeah, real. Yeah.
agree with that. That I similar had an event in 2016 which began to shape me in a different way and crisis
Yes,
and move me into a new way of thinking and being. Slow
absolutely.
process, but very
Exactly.
interesting.
Exactly that. I actually went into a retreat in a theological college because I thought I might have a look at that whole world. But I was tremendously disappointed. I just thought we were listening to sort of old dusty stuff. And really, as a result of that, I then had a series of very big dreams about Carl Jung, who I absolutely knew nothing about at all. And that was really the start of the change because as a result of those dreams, I bought all 16 volumes of Jung, and I read the whole lot, and I thought, well, that's what I'm going to
Oh
do.
my gosh, that's the 16 volumes. I have them on PDF. I don't have the actual hard copies of
No,
those.
I say 16 because it may have been, I can't remember, it was 14. It might have been 14. But
Yes.
anyway, I bought a
Yeah.
lot of Jung's works. And I thought he was doing something for the Western world that was long, long, long overdue. We all seem to be living a very superficial life in many, many ways. I mean, comfortable and fun and so on, but superficial. And I think he really reintroduced to the West the whole idea that we strange human beings have an inside world as much as an outside world, and that in a sense it's almost more important than the outside world.
Absolutely. And the dream world, as I find fascinating, the dream world also in sleep time, and how that can also sometimes we can almost predict things or see things, have like a premonition in sleep time on
Yes,
occasion.
I mean, I think certainly the way I work as a therapist, the dream world is absolutely completely essential, because it's like a snapshot of what's going on deep inside us. Not all dreams. I mean, you might have eaten too much cheese. That's a
Yeah,
possibility, or
exactly.
there is that stuff goes on as well, but but not the big dreams. And it's like you get to have a look at what's going on deep inside you. And of course, most people just dismiss it and say, well, it's absolute rubbish, because they haven't discovered that the dream speaks in a different language. It is essentially metaphor. So you've got to learn the language, but once you've learned the language, then you will be completely astounded.
Absolutely. So I'm at the beginning of looking at my dreams on a deeper level as well. And I haven't got a copy of the red book yet, but that's something I would like to. I have the
Yeah,
reader's copy, but not the big red
but
book.
for people who don't know what the Red Book is Carl Jung's um, own personal private diary, if you like, of his inner world, of his dream world. And if you read that book, you will be absolutely astonished by the dreams and the images he has in his dreams, which are meaningful, which are
Absolutely.
profoundly, profoundly meaningful. Now, we dismiss all that sort of stuff as sort of, nonsense. It's not nonsense. It's something we've lost, which we need to reconnect with.
And the art, as you said, the art that he did in that book is just some of it's so beautiful.
Very
It's
beautiful.
outstanding. What I would like to say, the learning of the imagination, and when you say the image bears witness to your state, what could you explain that a little bit to me?
Yes, I mean, I have to give a little bit of background, if you don't
I would
mind.
like
But
that. Yeah.
I decided at the late age of 60 to decided to. I'd read a lot of Jung. I'd become tremendously interested in the whole process, and I decided eventually I was going to train as a therapist, which was not really the background I came out of. I mean, I was an army officer and so on, so it was a big jump. But I knew intuitively it was where I wanted to go. And I was trained by an excellent organization called the Psychosynthesis and Education Trust, which was essentially a sort of Jungian idea. But it was really a, a talking therapy. The principal way that we dealt with people who came to work with us was by talking. And I would think 90% of therapy that's taking place in England these days is about talking, and we talk,
Hmm.
and some of it's fabulous, particularly early on when people can express themselves on subjects they've never done before. That's obviously hugely, hugely beneficial. But quite early on, I felt that that was just not enough.
I
That
agree with you.
it
And I've
was,
experienced that myself where I've had
yes,
therapy in a London clinic on the NHS. And I found that after the therapy, when it finished after a year and a half, once a week, that there was still more work that needed to be done, but I wasn't sure in which direction to head.
yes. I mean, I think it's such a vital piece of information, that from somebody like yourself who really had something that needed to be dealt with, um, and still at the end of a process of a year, and some people do year after year after year. Um, there was still an unsatisfied bit or an unfulfilled bit which just had not really been dealt with. Yeah.
And that I realized to continue talking, there was no purpose in that, that something else
Yes,
needed to
I
happen.
think it's again important to hear you say that, because I think it's what a lot of people feel,
Hmm.
but they like don't really say, because that's therapy. You know, obviously the Jungians look at it from a slightly different. They will involve dreams and so on, but through the way that most therapy is conducted in this country, it is largely through the thinking head, and even when we're talking about imagination, it's thinking about the imagination and
Hmm.
actually using the imagination. There's a huge difference between the two.
Absolutely. So when I came across you on YouTube and I saw the work that you were doing, the fact that I understood some of Jung's terminology in his work, that I thought I really wanted to meet with you, and you did a session with me. And within that, we talked about the golden triangle, the
Yeah,
awareness of the golden triangle.
but bef- before we get to the golden triangle, you asked a question about the image bears witness to the
Yes, I
state,
did.
and so I was trained in a perfectly conventional way, and I didn't really feel. I felt after practicing in that way, I really didn't feel that there was more, that we had to discover more. And by a whole series of fortuitous events, I came across this tradition of the Sufi tradition of Islam. And I'm not a Muslim and I'm not a Sufi, but I thought psychologically what they had to say was profoundly, profoundly interesting about human nature. Not whether you're a Muslim or a Christian, but just human nature. And they taught me a completely different way of working. And the way of working really uh, revolved around understanding that if we go inside, and by inside I mean really inside, close your eyes and you go inside yourself, that you begin to encounter images. And it's sometimes quite difficult to explain what those are until you've actually done it. And once you've done it, you say, well, of course, I completely understand.
Yeah,
But if I got you to close your eyes and said, Penelope, just imagine a house,
exactly.
you'd get a house.
I would.
And
Exactly.
so that is the creative imagination at work. Now, what you've done is you've had a thought which produced an image, which in fact is a symbol. And it's absolutely profound way of working. I hope it doesn't sound complicated, because it isn't. It's like we have that faculty in us. And the thing that is completely astonishing about the image you produce is it carries a message for you. I mean, I sort of very light-heartedly say, imagine a house, but that house would be full of information for me.
Absolutely. Full of symbols as well.
It is a symbol.
Yeah.
It's a symbol of the space you live inside, how you are. So if you, for example, I was to take you into that house, and you say, well, it's a bit cold and damp, it's not very friendly, I know that that is how you live every day, that you have
Absolutely.
that feeling inside you of slight coldness, just the world's not very friendly, and that's my reality and that's what I live with. So the symbol, the image, the saying goes, the image bears witness. Now that's an astonishing statement. So it's like the image is saying, hey, take a look at this. This is who and what you are. Infinitely more powerful than talking about it. In fact, we'd probably never we'd spend an awful lot of time talking to get
Or
the
trying
same
to get to that point.
result. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you worked with me and on that, and you asked me to imagine a house,
Yeah.
we did the process more than another time as well, but the house had completely changed, which really got me. The first house, you asked me to look for my little girl or my inner child as well, which fascinated me because that connection was clearly, there was a broken link there with the inner child, my inner being. And you helped me to revive that and bring me closer to something in myself that was more loving.
Absolutely. You see, I find in therapy generally what one is very, very often trying to do, is just reconnect the individual to themselves, because they've got severed they've cut themselves in order to survive, or whatever it was, the growing up they went through. And people these days, really come out of hideous situations, much more common, I think, than it probably used to be. I don't know about that, but it feels like it. And in order to survive, they get rid of certain feelings and emotions, things they'd like to say, but daren't, because they're very small and the grown-ups are very big.
Absolutely.
So they just get rid of it. And in this way, they split themselves. They cut themselves off.
Completely dissociated, like living in a
dissociated so you're
world.
Really basically just living in that bit of you.
Yeah.
Because what we usually do, you see, people forget that feelings are in the body. We think, oh no, feelings, I feel this, but what you're doing is you're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Really, to get to work, we've got to get into the body, get into the feelings, rather than just thinking about it.
And you had a video that I saw also about on YouTube about stopping thinking, to stop thinking in this process as well.
Well, I mean, I think we live in a society in which we've really come to just think about the world. Everybody just thinks. They've rather forgotten that there's anything else in us with which to perceive reality.
And looping as well. I found that through therapy, looping, it's like looping thoughts and not moving forward. It's almost like you losing agency to step into the next.
The stuff just goes round and round the head, round and round the head, forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, and absolutely nothing changes.
Exactly.
And so I put tremendous emphasis when I'm working with someone to show them that if we can stop thinking for a moment and switch on another faculty we have, which I call just pure awareness, it's tremendously helpful to become aware of what's actually going on in the body, rather than thinking about it. You see? So what talking therapy does, it talks about something. You've got lots of anxiety and you come to me and you say, Nick, can you help me with my anxiety? Well, we could sit there for a few light years talking about your anxiety and, did it happen when you were 1 or 2 or 6 or 20, whatever. Now, I just cut that process out. I'm interested in what your anxiety looks like. So I'm very, very interested in helping people to, because you see, particularly today, when the world is an anxious place,
it is.
You get onto that anxious thinking and it'll go on and on and on and on at you. Now, you need a very simple tool to drop it. And it really, it sounds sort of, I'm not saying it's simple, but you've got to come out of the head, essentially into the heart.
And that's what you did with me when we met. You showed me how to do that.
Yes,
that process.
And I think it had a good effect.
And it did, because it's like stop thinking and the spreading out across London. So do you want to explain that a little bit, like when you said taking the mind?
Yes. Well, it's like getting people used to it. They've been conditioned all through their education, all through their lives, to thinking. That's what they do. They think about stuff all the time. That's why half the world is so exhausted. And so I'm very keen to show people what pure awareness is, because I think awareness was the state of the world before the Western world started thinking all the time and produced this sort of science-based society. And for me, it's like, I think our original innocence is in that pure awareness of the world. And so I have developed a number of tricks, you might say, to help people to understand what awareness actually is. I don't want them thinking about it. I want them understanding that awareness is a completely different state. So I get them to see stuff inside them. So the first step is to get them to close their eyes and get them to watch their chest just rising and falling.
That's right. This is what you did with me. So you got me to focus, and with my eyes closed, I could see it moving.
But that's the point, you see. You could see it moving with your eyes closed. So that's something quite interesting. You can actually say, here's a completely different faculty. You're not seeing it with your eyes open, but you're seeing it with your eyes closed. That is awareness. You become aware. Now, obviously, I like to really deepen that experience and try and get you to really get some confidence in it. So I will then say, bring into your awareness the silence.
Hmm. And that's wonderful when that takes place and you realize that
Absolutely.
you can do that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Penelope. So now in your awareness, you've got two things. You've got your eyes closed, but you're watching the heart go up and down, and you become aware of the silence enveloping and holding you. Now, I then add one other faculty to that, which is the stillness of the spine.
Hmm.
Just understanding you root yourself in absolute stillness.
Hmm.
So you've got what you refer to as the golden triangle, which I rather like. And in the golden triangle, you've got pure awareness of the heart rising and falling. You've got silence. You've got stillness. And I tell you something, if there is such a thing as the peace that passes understanding, you're going to find it there in that golden triangle until you start thinking. And then thinking will just smash the party up all over again, and you've got to go back and start again, because that's what we do. And then the thoughts come in, and off you go. Yes, but I mean, this doesn't work for me, and I've just forgotten to buy
And
the
there can be
lunch.
what I have found, there can be resistance to our healing as well, or to taking ourselves to a place of stillness.
Oh.
There can be resistance. So even you doing that just now and explaining that, I was able to almost go into that place of experiencing the silence, even though we're in this room
Yes,
together right
talking.
now.
Yes,
That you took me into that.
exactly, exactly.
You brought
Penelope.
me into the awareness of that by
Yes,
explaining
and
to
you
me.
see, I used to go to India a lot. I used to go to ashrams in India when I was sort of restless and in my sort of questing stage. And my Indian friends over there so often used to say, in the West, people's hearts are just closed. They just had too much.
Hmm.
Too much stimulation, too much excitement, too much horror, too much. So the heart chakra, this whole intelligence in the heart, which is actually over the whole chest, is just shut. We just closed it off. And I think now, in this time of turmoil, we have to reopen the heart.
We do, because I think we need to bring back kindness
Absolutely.
into
Totally.
the collective.
Totally. And we don't want to think about kindness. You see,
No,
lots of people are thinking about being kind. And it's jolly good, let's be kind. But that's not being kind.
no.
And, a lot of people, a lot of rationalists will say, what is this heart business? A lot of sort of, new agey mumbo jumbo nonsense. I mean, come on. Well, actually, no. It is a profound center. And for a society in such a mess, we really need to learn that this practice of being present to the heart. The Sufis taught me this. They felt that the heart was the real organ of perception. And I have to say, certain sections of the Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church, they do the same thing. But because they've been through a great period where they've just relied on the head. And that's why I think the churches are empty, because, they're just saying things, just words. They're not actually connecting with the wonder of the feeling of the heart, which changes you completely. And it's also a safe place. It's a refuge. So when you're frightened or anxious, or you need to learn to drop down out of the head, I always say, just imagine you're like a sort of glass of muddy water. And as the mud begins to settle, you come down out of the head,
Yes.
down here into the silence of the heart. And this is not some sort of thing you have to go and sit in a cave in the Himalayas for 25 years for. It's like you can do it walking down the high street.
You can do it on the bus. You can do it absolutely anywhere.
So I think it's terribly important.
It is. Let's see here. So the awareness of the triangle we've looked at, and the other thing that I found fascinating was the image of the field. When you took me into a field, it gave me a whole new awareness of how I see myself and how
Brilliant.
destructive
Yeah.
one way of looking at myself was and how I was closing myself off by the left side
Yes.
and on the right. Do you want to explain that
Yes.
at all?
I absolutely love to. I mean, again, I suppose one of the absolutely essential ways that became hugely important to me personally, first of all, and then to the way I work, was understanding that in our society, partly, I think, due to our Christian heritage, or the way it turned out to be taught and developed, we've become very one-sided. So, you can just hear the parents say, well, just be good, just get a good job and get on and just be good.
Yeah.
The reality is we have a good side, but we also have a not so good side.
Yeah, the shadow as well, the shadow.
We can loosely call it the shadow, and I think that's just the most important thing. But a lot of modern therapy doesn't really work with it effectively, to my way of thinking, because it talks about it. So you talk about and even worse, I had a client the other day who'd been doing CBT, and he said the CBT therapist was encouraging her to try to get rid of the shadow. Now, as far as I'm concerned, and so moralizing the qualities in the clothes, oh, no, I can't be this, and I can't be that, and I can't be the next thing, I can't be angry, and I can't be jealous, and I can't be. But the fact is you are.
Yeah.
So we need to treat that in a different way. We need to start integrating it back into the personality and, well, accepting it. And then it begins to change.
And that was the image that when you gave me the image of the field and
Yes.
looking below my feet and then looking at a tree in front of me.
Absolutely.
And asking me to describe that.
Absolutely. So the device I used to access this more negative side, this more inferior part of the personality, which is a very important part of you. I don't want to bury it or moralize it. It's how could you possibly be whole? How could you possibly be 360 degrees Penelope, which you are, with all the qualities? They're all in there. How do we get on if we just get rid of half of them? It doesn't work. You're not going to be happy. And we live in a society where people are very split and where they beat up the negative side of themselves savagely.
Absolutely. And the inner critic can be really horrific.
Absolutely horrendous. And I can tell you it is so linked to certain diseases, particularly the pancreas. And if you go on it yourself, beating yourself up, you're absolutely useless. You see, you can't do anything, you're hopeless. It really has a very, very bad
an effect on our health.
So the device I simply use is only a device. But in order to get you to look at those two sides, I take you in and get you inside, into your in-world, in the heart, down here. You're going to do the imagining here. And I get you to imagine a field. I mean, it's like, why a field? Well, I'm not sure. This is what I use.
Yeah.
But it's a device. It's like a framework around a picture. So I get you to imagine that you're standing in a field, and you did that very beautifully. And then I get you to imagine there's a tree up the far end of the field, and you did that very beautifully. And then I get you to imagine there's a dividing line, and suddenly we've got two fields and two sides.
And you said to me as well you asked me how I felt about what I felt about the person on the left.
Yeah.
And what I felt about the person on the right.
Yeah.
Being myself.
Looking at yourself.
Looking at myself.
I mean, to me, the wonder of working in this way, if you have now become an observer of yourself. Of course, you left out one small bit, but before we did that visualization, I asked you to tell me what were your bright, shiny, positive sides.
That's it.
Qualities.
Yeah.
And what were the negative ones? And you did that beautifully. You said, well, I'm very determined. I love my life. I can walk the dog and I make good pancakes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the positive qualities. I love nature and so on. And then over here, there's the whole awfulness of fear and anger and, very common, in your case, quite extreme, quite serious. And we've got to start the process of integrating that, but not by talking about it.
And that's what you helped me to do. And that image began to help me to merge and integrate.
Absolutely. Because you see,
and give me
again,
agency.
Well, I was just about to say, Penelope, we're not talking about it.
We weren't. We're
doing
doing
it. We're looking at it. So when I say again and again, the image bears witness to the state you're in, which is a Sufi saying, you've now got an extraordinary relationship with yourself. You're looking at the shadow damaged part of yourself, and I can't quite remember what your reaction was, sort of, poor her.
And I wanted to almost bring her over to the good side, which you
Well, of
stopped
course,
me.
because you see, if you were practicing Christian, that's what you do. You'd say, get rid of all the dark, slimy stuff, and just become a nice, good person. But it doesn't, unfortunately, work like that. The image on the right and the left, the positive side, the negative side, are part of a whole. And to stand a chance of ending up loving yourself, you're going to have to learn to accept even the negative qualities, instead of burying them, pretending they don't exist, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the root of very much autoimmune disease. Because it'll come back and bite you.
I agree that and we can become healthier the more we stop the thinking and start using imagery. We can actually, a lot of healing can take place in the body.
I mean, I am absolutely staggered how, if we do this work, we gradually began to feel better.
I agree.
And
I've experienced that.
That's not necessarily so with medication, and it's not necessarily so with talking therapy. I did years of talking therapy, and I didn't feel better at the end of it at all. I was actually, if anything, more confused, because we were talking about things a long time ago. Because this process is like you're dealing with it directly now. And as a therapist, I don't even ask you about what happened.
You
I used to.
ask me, yes.
I spent hours saying, well, how was it like, what were you like, and what was your early life like? We went all back all those through memories and opened them all up.
It takes so long to go over those things as well.
Yeah.
So
it takes so long, whereas the image goes like, bang, oh my God, she looks awful, she's so sad, or whatever it is.
You've absolutely inspired me to keep working with myself using that.
Lovely. That's so lovely.
And I think that people, is there anything you'd like people to know, or where maybe they can continue this work that you're telling me about?
I think the first step is to be curious about our lives. I mean, basically, inertia plays a tremendous role in people doing nothing. They just can't be bothered, really, because their life is sort of tolerable as it is, and they just go on as it is.
Do you think apathy as well? Apathy or inertia?
Apathy. I'd prefer to call it inertia.
Okay.
Because, again, apathy smacks a little bit of judgment to me. I think inertia is a very particular thing, and it's very often sometimes a person's defense from an awful, awful life. They just can't move. So I'm very, we can become judgmental so quickly. Oh, just get up and get a good job and shut up, sort of stuff. And that's not the way I work. So I think you first of all have to be dissatisfied with the way you are, because after all, if you're satisfied with the way you are, why are you going to do anything?
If I was satisfied with the way I was, then I wouldn't have been viewing your videos. I wouldn't have been searching. You wouldn't have
been crawling around the net and trying to find something that made sense to you, you see, I think.
Exactly.
That had meaning. And to me, this is the acid test on session number 1. I don't want to see you for the next 500 years, thanks very much. I mean, I want to, if I can help you in 4 or 5 sessions to really change the direction of your search for yourself, well, that's about what it should be. You've got to be curious. So you've got to be curious. You've got to be hurting somewhere, I think, dissatisfied with yourself. And you see, you're just such a wonderful example, because you've done so much. You've done so much because you're, well, I won't be too polite, but anyway, you really worked at it. And I really admire that. It's like you were determined to find a way through your very, very traumatic upbringing and so on. And, you'd read everything. You practiced endless forms of therapy, but you hadn't got down into the inside world.
No, and that is what you helped me.
Well, it's how I helped myself, so that, I knew about it.
So we've covered I've got my list here. So we've covered the tree image and the healing and integration we've covered, I believe, that we've looked at that. Is there any?
Yes, can I just say something about
Yeah.
that? I happen to believe we hold the potential of wholeness inside us. I don't think we are partial creatures. I think there is right in the bottom of us a completeness and a wholeness. And our education and our culture splits us off from that. And so, as I said before, just be that, just get a job and shut up. Whereas the whole of us, which includes the light and the dark, it includes all the faculties we have, not just thinking, but awareness and intuition and all these lovely faculties we've got. We need to draw on these for our wholeness.
I think there's a lot of beauty in our humanness and even in our traumas that we've experienced, what it can bring into the world that as well.
Oof, gosh.
So much
Penelope,
beauty.
for you to say that when I know something of your journey and just how horrific it was, I think is absolutely inspiring. And, I was thinking, I don't know why, I'm thinking in my bath or something. If you look at something like an owl or a hawk or the owl is particularly good at it, can glide across a snow-covered field and know that there is a mouse 2 foot down.
Incredible.
Now, we have the same faculties. We're a later model than the owl, which is very often much more beautiful than we are, that's for sure. But you think of that faculty. You think of how a vulture knows that there's a dead animal 10 miles away, whatever it is. And you just think about that. I mean, it's incredible. So by just thinking about stuff, I think we're narrowing our potentiality as humans.
And this work brings us back to the intuitive, into the heart.
It's why
healing.
It's why I think, Penelope, some basic form of meditation is absolutely, completely essential. Because if we come out of this head thing, which is busy, 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 anxious, worried, all that sort of stuff that goes, and also, I'm enjoying it, and so if we come out of that down deep inside ourselves, as the Chinese would say, become as still as a breathing mountain, it's like, absolutely silent and still, we are immediately going to engage our other faculties of awareness and intuition, rather than just in a panic-stricken way thinking about something. And it's taken me a long time to practice and do that myself, but it's worth it.
And really, the beautiful work that I've experienced as well with what you helped me with. I was wondering if there's anything else here. So the reflection is there any message you would like to leave the listeners with about rediscovering imagination in the modern world? Or do you feel we've covered it?
Yes. Have we got a couple of hours? Look, if you look at England's medieval world, or any medieval world, it's packed with incredible imagery and imaginative festivals and ways of recognizing and honoring the world and the seasons and the festivals that go with it and all that sort of stuff. Now, we've eradicated enormous amount, not completely, because we still have sort of Glastonbury and some people go to church and so on. So not completely. But all of those activities, if you think about it, certainly all the spiritual activities, what is a high mass if it's not pure imagination?
And included in the dream world, taking notice of our dreams as well, bringing back the imagination, the colours,
Completely.
the smells, the beauty, and the nature around us.
So what the Sufi tradition taught me, but what happened to the imagination in the Enlightenment? And the Enlightenment was clearly when we, around the end of the 17th century, end of the 16th, early 17th century, philosophy had always been tied to religion. So there was always a check on the way we thought, rooted in spiritual ideas about the world. In the Enlightenment, we tore that out and we just concentrated on the thinking mind, and it produced incredible stuff, marvelous inventions and absolutely mind-blowingly interesting stuff. But it ripped us out of that old route. And so, and the medieval world was full of sort of angels and devils and, all sorts of stuff. It's now gone. We live in a secular society. And I would say a dead, rather arid landscape, a barren landscape, because we've lost. And so the imagination, which was the absolute key to that world, was, modern science just said it was imaginary. It wasn't real. It's just sort of fun, Walt Disney or something like that. But in the Sufi tradition, the imagination was a faculty of the creator. In fact, many Sufis said that the presence of the imagination was the creator himself or herself in the world. And when I read that, it made a really profound impression on me. I thought, wow, this gives the imagination a status I'd never really ever thought about, because I'd been brought up to think it was sort of, something quite fun. You play party games with imagination, and you'd be an actor, or you could do advertising and stuff. But no, the Sufis brought back to me the immense value of the imagination in terms of how we actually see and view our world, how we imagine our world, actually.
Would you suggest any book to learn about the Sufi understanding? Is there any book that...
Gosh, well, yeah. I mean, the great work is, the really important work is quite hard to get through. Jung is a very good place to start. Jung's own book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, it's an introduction to a slightly different way of thinking.
That's a great tip for people, I think, to pick up that book. And I know that I never read the hard copy, but I did have it on Audible, so
Yes.
it's available on Audible as well.
I'm sure.
For people that don't have time.
And I think, I certainly the book that inspired me to get involved with this whole thing, and the reason I bought all the Jung volumes and read them and eventually trained, was a book by Lawrence van der Post, who was a great friend of our present king, called The Story of Our Time. And I think we need to understand the story of our time, what is going on, and how can we navigate this terrible sea of lack of meaning, as far as I can see.
I think there is a lack
people
of
suffer
meaning.
tremendously. People suffer anything if they know what they're doing.
And I think bringing in the meaning back into, to make things meaningful, is important.
And the organ that will do that is the heart.
Okay.
You're never going to do it with the head.
So we're going to be working on our hearts, and I would like to know also, if people did want to contact you, is there any way that people can contact you?
Well, I got a website.
Okay.
I've got a website which I think goes under the title of The Great Endeavour.
Okay.
Counselling, and you can find me there. I mean, the thing I have to say is that I am a one-man band.
You are?
Yes. I mean, I'm terribly, terribly keen to work with other therapists, to try to show them, because, you and I have met sort of 3 or 4 times formally.
We have.
And you just got, because you're already a therapist, you just picked it up like that, and you absolutely instantly understood.
And I was searching, because I think the difficulty is seeing the suffering continue, like the looping of suffering not stopping. And this is what I've been searching for something that stops the looping. Because
James Hillman, the great American, well, he was originally English psychotherapist. He said, 100 years of therapy and the world's getting worse. And I think there's a really good point here. I personally, I'm wary I don't want to denigrate anybody's efforts as a therapist, because I think the vast majority of therapists meet in goodwill, with sincerity. They want to really help. But endlessly talking about stuff, it's slightly like research. You can endlessly research. But in the end, you have to practice. And linking yourself up with your dream images, beginning to follow the images that rise up inside you, is how you teach yourself, is how you get taught that we are not perhaps quite the masters in our own house we think we are. And the West has become tremendously arrogant about that. We think we can fix anything. Well, we clearly can't.
And individually, having that experience now, I'm able to explain to people the experience that you allowed me to have with the field and the house, and I can pass that on with some of
Yes,
the work
you
I
see,
do.
I think the beautiful way of working in this way is it's not you or me saying to the person who needs help, well, I think what you should do and you should do. It's none of that. It's just have a look at this, have a look at your own images and see what you think about them. You know?
Because they're there anyway.
I
This
mean,
is the interesting
I had a
thing.
very, very beautiful, uh, uh, a very beautiful thing recently where someone who was completely new to therapy, never thought of doing therapy, and had, should we say, some difficulty in feeling that the images were real, meant stuff, until she dreamt that the road she normally travelled was in fact blocked, and she was going to have to find another road, and that was pretty frightening. Well, I mean, she can't go on behaving the way she is. She
And
just can't do it.
and the image then, in that awareness of the image that I was holding of the dishevelled, in my view, on the left
Yes,
side, this dishevelled,
yes,
broken person
yes,
wilting. I thought,
yes.
wow, I'm holding this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you see, when I'm working with autoimmune diseases, and I particularly with Parkinson's, which I think is such an interesting thing because there's no virus, there's no pathogen. For me, it's just a logical outcome of a life lived in a particular form of stress. Absolutely logical. But to show somebody what they look like, or what the negative side, the left-hand side of the field. So that field has become pretty basic to me. Like, it's like, just remember, I don't care who you are, you can be the Prime Minister of England, or you can be, anybody. You've got those two sides. Now, if you don't know that, then there'll be a civil war going on inside you. You tear yourself to bits with the sort of the tension of
And
these
the
two.
denial of that, as you
Absolute
said,
denial.
what the
And you
denial.
see the fraudulence of that very often in politics. People talking about how they really want to do this, that, and the next thing, and they really want to look after their constituents. I know when I became an MP, I suddenly discovered that I wasn't actually that interested in my constituents. I was really only interested in me, and I promptly resigned. Because you've got to look at our motives for doing things. It's the status. No, I want the status. I want to be able
And
to.
I found that being younger, that I might wanting to run a service industry business, that it was what was motivating me wasn't my heart. It was like, I need to get out and I need to make enough money to escape. So
Yes,
that is, that's a lifetime that can be destroyed with that idea. We can
it
destroy it.
can, Penelope. But on the other hand, as you say, you had to survive.
I did.
And I think in the first half of life, particularly, we have to get out there and somehow make some money, or, do something. The second half of life is different because it's like, you're going up in the first half and then you go across the top, the midpoint, and then you're going down into a different reality. And so I think you have to have these adventures and go and, fight your battles. And that's why I'm slightly, people go into becoming therapists too early. I think they should go and run, as you did, go and run your services company, and realize how difficult and tough that is. That's all part of
Development.
development,
It
really,
is.
learning what life is. Yeah, yeah.
It's really wonderful. I'm really pleased that I've spent this time with you today. doing this talk, and I'm sure there's more that we can add to this
Well,
in
it's
time.
lovely. And as I say, Penelope, it's wonderful that you have, uh, you know, it's so lovely that you're prepared to be open about your own situation, which was pretty grim, and which I just feel you really begun to triumph over, which is a very inspiring thing. And there are a lot of people out there who suffer so badly, and they need to know there is a way through the woods. We can come out the other
We
side,
can.
that we're not alone. I think that's what I really want to say, is we don't know where these images come from exactly, a lot of them. You produce images in your dreams and so on. You have to say, well, where these come. Now, the sloppy answer is, well, it's the mind or it's the unconscious or something. Well, just look at them and look at the brilliance and the beauty of these images, and you begin to think, oh, there's something funny going on around here. And I think that would be lovely to get that sense back into our society. You don't have to name it, but I think, as I've said in a previous talk, I think the next generation has to make up its mind. Do we or do we not live inside a greater intelligence than our own? Because our own individual answer to that question, as we struggle to make sense of the world, um, will be absolutely critical in finding our way through the mess, if I could put it that way.
We're definitely going through some huge
Huge,
changes.
huge, huge changes. And we've got to be, all of us, ready to change. I love the Dalai Lama saying, well, it's quite possible they won't want a Dalai Lama. I'm fine with that. Life changes. Well, it changes. It's only painful if we resist the change, really.
It's wonderful.
Thank you very much, Penelope. It's been good fun.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And we'll do more work on this maybe in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.